Happy Friday, everyone. A big edition of the Friday preview this week. All thanks to Inside Football, the must-read for the Fairnicombe footy fan. Pick up a copy from your local newsagents or download on your iPhones or iPads. I'm Ben Waterworth, and joining me, three of the younger brigade of the AFL media team to have a look at all of tomorrow's senior games. Let's start with the man who was just starring on AFL TV during the week, Sam Gastin. Good afternoon to you, Sam.
Not sure about that, Benny, but thank you very much. It's good to be here on a Friday.
Good to have you on board. Also, a man who's been starring on AFL TV right throughout the year is Braden Ingram, the Tacoma Macca's breaking news specialist. Good afternoon to you, Braden.
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Benny. Yeah, thank you. I love talking footy on a Friday afternoon.
And one man who loves talking football on a Friday afternoon is Mitchum Wood, and he joins us as per usual over the past couple of weeks. Hello, Mitch.
Thanks, Ben. Good to be here once again. Looking forward to previewing all games tomorrow.
And let's start back to you, because we're going to have a look at Division 4 to start off with as we have a look at the Division 4 ladder. Some interesting games this weekend that will certainly shape how that ladder looks towards the end of the season. Forest Hill and Canterbury is probably not one of those games, but it's an important day, certainly for Canterbury, as they celebrate their book launch and gala dinner at the night, but it's going to be tough against Forest Hill.
Yeah, it should be. It's a must-win game for Forest Hill if they want to play finals this season. The Zebras, they sit in 7th place on the ladder with 4 wins and 6 losses and have lost their last 3 games. They have just come off a 79-point loss to the undefeated South Belgrave. Whereas Canterbury, they're playing for a lot of respect. They almost achieved that elusive win last week against Kilsyth. The Cobras led by 8 points going into the last quarter, but they were outplayed by the Cougars and fell short by 8 points. Ryan Fisher has been in fine form for Forest Hill throughout the past few weeks, while Nathan Jamu and Ash Nolte will be hoping to have an impact on the scoreboard up forward. Canterbury has had several consistent performers in an otherwise disappointing season. Among these include Stuart Blackham and Lachlan Chapman. They have featured in the best in most games and will be hoping to replicate it in tomorrow's game. There is so much at stake for the Zebras, and with the home ground advantage, I expect them to win in a close contest and make it 11 consecutive losses for the Cobras.
The Sharks will be swarming at Dominie Reserve tomorrow afternoon, Braden Ingram, but they come up against the might of South Belgrave, who are not doing a lot wrong at the moment.
No, you're right there, Benny. They're sensational. I've loved their work all season, particularly in the Ferntree Gully game and after that as well. They've seemed to address their issue with their starts, which I think was the one thing that was hanging over their head. They've managed to clean that up. Had a big win over Forest Hill last weekend, and they're looking strong. Park Orchards at home. Look, I mean, they're more of a chance at home, put it that way. At South Belgrave, you're really going to struggle, but they went down to Coldstream by 13 points last week, and I think if they had any chance or feeling of finals, they really had to win that. It makes things hard now. They really only are now. They sit on the 4 wins, but they're only a game behind Surrey Park and with a pretty similar percentage. You wouldn't expect them to win this game, but look, funnier things have happened in Division 4 this year. We've had some surprising results, so I don't think you can rule them out just yet, but they would need to be strong tomorrow rather. I think South Belgrave will get the win. They've got plenty of power players, but Park Orchards, if they can be competitive, then I think they can still have one eye looking towards finals.
A couple of weeks ago, Sam, Nunawading and Coldstream probably wouldn't have looked like the most appetising game of all time, but after recent results, this game looks rather intriguing as we go from one edge of the eastern suburbs to the other.
Yeah, definitely. It will be a long trip for Coldstream on Saturday afternoon when they travel out to Coonung Reserve. I don't think any of us thought they would spend too long in Division 4. I think we thought they were going to be one of the stronger teams this year, Coldstream, that is. But here they are at 9 games into the season. They've only got the 4 wins on the board, so they do really need to start putting the pieces together if they are going to improve those performances and win a few more games. So they had a 13-point win over Park Orchards on the weekend, which they would have been happy with. They might have liked a bit of a bigger margin there, but you'll take the 4 points all the same. Liam Dowdy has been one that's really impressed this year with 29 goals from 7 games, and he kicked 5 on the weekend there, with Josh Gordon and Matt Price chipping in with 4 each. So they're getting some good even contributions there from their forwards. As for Nunawading, well, they caused probably one of the upsets of the round last week against Ferntree Gully, and a 5-2 fourth quarter really sealed that victory in the come-from-behind win there. And I think I said it last week as well, they're playing some really good footy in the past 4 or 5 weeks, and while they weren't really putting wins on the board up until last week, they were sort of inching closer and closer to that win. So as we saw on the weekend, they put in a really good performance there. And one man who did add to that performance was Robert Papp, who kicked 6 goals in a best-on-ground performance. He's been in the best 5 times this year with 14 goals, and he's a midfielder as well. So when you're getting that sort of contribution out of your midfield, it's really encouraging. So Look, I think this one will be a danger game for Coldstream, and I think Nunawading might cause a little bit of an upset.
Riau, it's a feline fiesta as Surrey Park Panthers host the Silvan Cats, Mitch, out there at Surrey Park Reserve today. The Panthers coming off the bye, but Silvan are going pretty well at the moment.
Yeah, well, both Surrey Park and Silvan, they've been in reasonably good form of late, so this game is pretty much shaping up to be a beauty. There's no doubt that both teams are looking to consolidate their position in the top 5. The Panthers, as you said, they had the bye last week, but enjoyed a gutsy 28-point victory over finals contender Forest Hill in round 10. Luke Conker led the way with 3 goals in a best-on-ground performance. For the Cats, that was too strong for the hapless Eastern Lions and came home winners by 90 points. Surrey Park must limit the influence of Silvan's key forward in Patrick Rattray. He has kicked 35 goals for the season, including 4 in last week's win. Tyson McKenzie has been named in the best on 8 of the 10 occasions and has received great support from playing coach Chris Goodlett, veteran Dan Toohey and Kane Shaw. Daniel Morris and Benjamin Walker have all been serviceable throughout the season for the Panthers, along with goal kickers Liam Doidge and Luke Conker. This is a crucial game for Surrey Park, as a loss could see them fall out of the 5 if Coldstream win against Nunawading. In saying that, though, I think Silvan will take the 4 points in a hard-fought game.
Game of the round in Division 4 tomorrow afternoon, Braden Ingram, as third-placed Kilsyth hosts second-placed Ferntree Gully. Both teams weren't very convincing last weekend, with the Gully going down in a shock loss to Nunawading.
I think that's why this game is so hard to pick, Ben. Neither team is really tearing the competition to shreds, which is a bit surprising considering they sit second and third. The trouble for Ferntree Gully really started in the South Belgrave game. They was expected to be a blockbuster. They came out and just couldn't perform. Didn't win a quarter and really struggled in that game. And again, a couple of weeks later, they came out and they're just not looking too strong at the moment. I just worry how they're looking. They're pretty convincing over Canterbury, but lost to Nunawading by 12 points last week, and that came as a real shock. And I think that'll certainly shock them into a bit of action on the weekend. At the same time, Kilsyth just got over the line against Canterbury by 8 points. That's not really what you want to see, I think, at Kilsyth. Then again, they're still going strong. I mean, Jay Sherlock kicked 7 goals. He's been a key for them, but at the same time, all other goal kickers were singles. They certainly rely on Jay Sherlock heavily. That could be a bit of an issue on the weekend. If Ferntree Gully can contain him, you just worry where their goals are going to come from. They've been able to kick decent scores this year, so we'll see how that goes. Ferntree Gully, on the other hand, they're a young list. And I think maybe mid-season blues, you come off a bit of a break after the Queen's birthday and just a while for them to get back up again. It's going to be a real tight one. Both teams sitting on 8 wins, and I mean, this is a crucial game. Silvan's crept up; they're a game behind, and if you want to stay in touch with South Belgrave, this is a big win. And I think at home, Kilsyth will get the win. Pink's Reserve is a ground they love to play at, and they control the play really well there. And I think, as you can see, I don't sound too confident, but I think it's going to be Kilsyth in a tight one.
Should be a close game nonetheless, and we'll be all over it on EFL Game Day tomorrow afternoon. That's Division 4 done and dusted, gentlemen. You're listening to the Friday preview, all thanks to Inside Football, the must-read for the fair income footy fan. Time to get stuck into Division 3 as we have a look at the Division 3 ladder. Up the top of the ladder, we see Wantirna South, Sam, and towards the bottom of the ladder, we see Warrandyte. And I think we might see a big margin when these two sides meet tomorrow afternoon.
This game's one that could really get ugly for Warrandyte. I think it's not going to be a close contest, and I think Wantirna South will run away with it pretty convincingly. And they have been fantastic in their last 3 weeks, as well as across the whole season. And another percentage-boosting win this week could get them up to that top spot on the ladder, obviously depending on how Mitchum and Doncaster go. So they'll be looking to get up the top with obviously a few games left of the season. But if they can get that prime position, they'll be in really good shape for the finals coming up. As I said, their last 3 weeks have been great. They've had really convincing wins, and there's some names that do keep standing out on a weekly basis. One of them is Andrew Teakle, who's been in the best 6 times this year, and Brad Hutchinson as well is another one that always puts in some solid contributions. So if you add them to a guy like Daniel Bodome, who's been fantastic, he's kicked 42 goals, second in the goal kicking in Division 2, and is playing some really good footy. So his best goal tally for the season so far has been 7, and I think he could easily beat that this week against Warrandyte. They've got some real defensive issues down there, with an average losing margin of 87 points in the last month. So they're getting some real big scores kicked on them, and you see that in their percentage as well. It's 55%, which is the lowest in the competition in Division 3. So while they are a game clear of Whitehorse there on last spot, they're going to have to do something really quickly to turn around their current situation and avoid relegation, because there's not much good to say about the way their footy's going at the moment. William Gaffney was one that stood out last week. Is one of the best players in the last couple of weeks in that side. And Josh Eyre and Daniel Large, guys we've spoken about before, but they need more contributions from them, and they need other guys to stand up as well if there are going to be any chance in the back half of this season. Wantirna South won by 88 points earlier on in the year when these two sides met, and I think it could be much more this time.
The wide-open expanses of Tormore Reserve will play host to the mighty Boronia Hawks, and they come up against the confidence-filled Whitehorse Pioneers, Mitchum Wood. Can the Pioneers make it 2 in a row, or will Boronia stop them in their tracks?
Yeah, well, as you said, Whitehorse, they'll definitely go into tomorrow's game with a lot of confidence after singing the song for the first time against Chirnside Park last week. They have a huge challenge ahead of them, though, when they travel to play a relentless Boronia outfit. The two teams met earlier on in the season, with the Hawks winning by 35 points in a scrappy contest at Springfield Park. Boronia has won its last 4 games in convincing fashion. They recorded a famous 74-point victory over arch rivals, the Basin. The Hawks piled on 10 last quarter goals and only conceded 2 points as Mark Hardy's men humiliated the Bears. Equally as impressive were the Pioneers, who led at every change to defeat the Chirnside Park Panthers by 31 points. They were strong across all areas of the ground, and half of the side kicked a goal in their first win. It's good to see young Lockie Watson of Boronia really relishing his opportunity at senior football. He kicked 4 goals in last week's win and has played every game to date. The Hawks will also be hoping to stop Timothy Law, who was influential on the wing or in the Pioneers' victory last week. Whitehorse will be competitive, but Boronia at home should make it 5 wins in a row.
Doncaster host Ringwood tomorrow afternoon. Braden Ingram out there at Shark Park, Shram's Reserve. Ringwood had a golden opportunity against Wantirna South last weekend. They let it slip, and it won't get it much easier for them because they come up against the might of the Sharks.
Yeah, consistency is the key for Brent Jane's boys, and that's the thing that really seems to escape them this season. They play a sensational game, beat the Basin after the siren with a Trent Farmer goal the previous week, and then pretty convincingly beaten by Wantirna South, at least in the final term. They ended up there next, down by 7 points at three-quarter time, Ringwood, but Wantirna South showed their class, and probably Ringwood showed maybe just their lack of it, maybe their lack of polish as well in the final term to really match it against those top sides. They can bring it occasionally, as we've seen. They've beaten the Basin both times, but really they struggle against these top sides. And I think Doncaster, look, I mean, the thing about them is they had plenty of goal kickers last week, even without Nathan Thompson. They don't seem to have any issues without him, and they have goal kickers bob up, and that's probably the thing that Ringwood don't have. I mean, Farmer can kick goals, Katsiolis, but it's not on a consistent basis. I mean, Appleford and McNamara for Doncaster both kicked 4 last week, and whether Thompson's there or not, they find a way to kick goals, and that's crucial. Whenever you don't have players, you've got to find a way, and they do. Look, Doncaster are first, but they're both on 9 wins with Mitchum and Wantirna South, so this is a big game for them, because I think if they don't bring it, Ringwood can certainly match it with them if they're on their day. Doncaster pretty comfortably for me, but they just need to be careful they don't let Ringwood get on top of them.
Heathmont and the Glen Waverley Hawks go head-to-head at 8G Parker Reserve, the hangar tomorrow afternoon. Samuel Gastin. Pre-season, a lot of us thought Glen Waverley would have been around 6th, but now they find themselves towards the bottom. Heathmont find themselves in 6th spot at the moment, and a lot of us thought that they'd be at the bottom. It's an interesting world, this EFL, isn't it?
It certainly is. But Heathmont Jets, they're only 1 game out of the top 5, and they're sitting quite comfortably up there with 6 wins and 5 losses. Percentage has been an issue for them. They've got the second lowest in Division 3, so while they are only that 1 game back, it almost is that other game if they are going to sort of push for a finals chance. They've had a tough stretch in the last couple of weeks, but last week bounced back really strongly, I thought, and Kevin Clark was one that stood up, and he's been fantastic in the last month or so. Running off half-back, he's putting in some solid contributions there, so he continues to impress there. And if you add his name to guys like the skipper, Dylan Svens, David Sindri, and Kieran O'Driscoll as well, they have got some really strong players that can put the scores on the board and really challenge a lot of teams in that Division 3 competition. As for the Glen Waverley Hawks, well, they lost a real sort of free-flowing and high-scoring match last week against Mitchum in a game where I think there were 12 goals or something like that kicked in the last quarter. So they put a respectable score on the board and didn't lose by all that much against the all-conquering Mitchum, but they would have been hoping... Well, I think they'll be pretty happy with that performance, actually, but a win's always better than a loss. Their last 3 have been really tough against the Basin, Doncaster and Mitchum. 3 real games that will probably leave them a bit flat, and they are chasing a win, and they're probably probably not feeling great about the way their footy's going at the moment. They've lost their big key full forward, Andrew Azzopardi, who's going to be a massive loss for them, and they really need someone to fill that spot and start kicking some goals. And Matthew Carnelli is one that probably could fill in there. He lined up at full forward last week and has kicked 18 goals for the year. So if he can add a bit more of a contribution there and sort of kick some big bags, they might be a chance to win a couple of games in the back end of this season. But I don't think this will be one of them. I think Heathmont will win at home.
Smell that, Mitch? It's a danger game. I smell a danger game for Templestowe because they head out to Kimberley Reserve tomorrow afternoon to take on the Chirnside Park Panthers, who will be out for redemption after that shock loss to the Pioneers last weekend.
Yeah, well, it's been a difficult year for both Chirnside Park and Templestowe. The Panthers were full of confidence going into their clash with the winless Whitehorse Pioneers, following a commanding win over Warrandyte in round 10. However, they were comprehensively outplayed and never looked like winning in the 31-point loss. Meanwhile, the Dockers have lost their last 5 encounters after a promising start to the season. Their most recent loss came at the hands of Doncaster by 95 points. The last time these two teams met was in round 2, and Templestowe came home winners by 25 points. Chirnside Park will need big games from its more experienced players, including Luke Caratelli, Captain Scott Hamill, Aaron Pantanella and Stephen Pepping. The man to watch for the Dockers is Jamie Bain. He has kicked 29 goals and has been named in the best on 7 occasions from his 9 appearances. Adam Prestigiacomo can also be a damaging player around the midfield, and he'll need to take the game on if Templestowe want to end its 5-game losing streak. It is clear that both teams will be hungry and determined to win from the very outset. This game could really go either way, and I'm going to tip the Dockers by 3 goals.
The final game in Division 3 is the game of the round, Braden Ingram. It's Mitchum hosting the Basin. You saw this game earlier on in the year, and it was a cracker. Are we set for another cracker tomorrow afternoon?
Yeah, look, we could be, but 2 words I think could spell danger for the Basin, and that's Christopher Hogle. He didn't play in that game. He was still at Balwyn at that stage, and since he's come to Walker Park, he's torn it to shreds. He's kicked 30 goals in 6 matches with 2 totals of 7 and 9 in a couple of games. So he can kick big hauls, and along with Stevie Pim, who's kicked 50 for the season, they're really tearing that forward line to shreds. Look, the Basin last week, they were good up to 3/4 time and then went on to lose by 74 points. So down by, I think, 8 at 3/4 time. They were in that game up to the next, and that's probably the first time I've seen the Basin look just a bit slow and a little bit old. I mean, they were missing Colterra and Clinton King, 2 key players for them, but in the end, Boronia really with their speed ran them off their feet in the end. Walker's a small ground, which certainly suits the Basin. Batterham is also small, so I think that'll at least help them, but it's going to be tough. They need to win this game, though, because if they lose, it makes things difficult. They're sitting in 5th on the ladder. Boronia is a game in front of them, and if they do lose, it really opens the door for sides like Heathmont and Ringwood into that 5th spot and makes it a real tough challenge going into finals. Got to contain Pim and Hogle, as I said. They're key players. Mitchum have got plenty of others as well, but Basin players need to fire. Trevor Mills was a little down last week. Maxi Kruger's just come back from injury, and he's taking a little while to adjust. And look, down forward's probably where they got killed last week. They bought the ball inside on plenty of occasions, but again, it rebounded out so quickly, and there was nothing they can do about it. The defence from Boronia was sensational and made things too difficult. Look, I think Mitchum are going to win this at home. They're going along very nicely at the moment. And as much as the Basin can be gallant against top sides, and it will be a close game, I think it's going to be Mitchum by a couple of goals.
Well done, boys. Division 3 done and dusted, and we're set for another big round of Division 3 as the closest division in the competition heats up towards the end of the season. You're listening to the Friday Preview, all thanks to Inside Football. Make sure you pick up that great read from your local newsagent, or you can go all tech, high-tech that is, and download on your iPhones or iPad. Let's have a look at the Division 2 ladder as we're about to get stuck into all things Division 2, and our Division 2 expert here on the Friday Preview is Sam Gastin, and we're throwing Upper Ferntree, Gully and Mooroolbark to him straight away. Sam, you saw Mooroolbark last weekend. I think we expected a bit more out of the Mustangs, and they went down. You'd think they'd be able to bounce back against Upper Ferntree Gully, though. You'd
think so, yeah, and you're right. They weren't as impressive as we would have liked to see last week, going down by 21 points to North Ringwood. I think they were really outclassed in that game, and for one of the sides that we have said have been the big improver in sort of the last couple of weeks, they were pretty disappointing. So they will be looking to bounce back. They'll be looking to have a big win against Upper Ferntree Gully, who are sitting in last position and are in pretty dangerous territory in the relegation zone there in Division 2. I haven't seen much of the Upper Ferntree Gully side this year, but they record very low scores. Now, I don't know if that's a poor attack. I don't know if they can't get the scores on the board, or they do play with that more defensive mindset. I mean, if they can work that effectively and sort of drag teams down and play a defensive style of game, then perhaps they can get a couple more wins on the board. But they do have tough games ahead, and they're sort of running out of a bit of time to salvage their season there. As for Mooroolbark, well, I was really impressed by Trent Giorgio last week. He was a real standout to me, lining up across half-back there. He's got a massive boot on him and finds targets as well. That's the thing about him. He's a really impressive player down there with Matt Polkinghorne, Mark Martin, and I thought Cameron Linford as well last week was quite good. So one they'll be looking also to get back is their captain, Luke Shivers, who missed last week. He had a strained wrist or something like that. He was running water, so I'm sure he wouldn't like to be doing that too much more often. I think Mooroolbark will bounce back pretty easily.
Bayswater host the Waverley Blues out to the wide expanses of Bayswater Oval tomorrow, Mitchell Wood. And Bayswater, they're a funny team. They've got the fourth best percentage in Division 2, but you're looking at the ladder, they currently sit third last. They're a funny team, so are the Waverley Blues, but they're in some pretty good form.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on this game for both teams. Bayswater moved one game clear of bottom spot with a comfortable 58-point victory over Donvale last week, whereas the Waverley Blues, they're still in contention to play finals after a 14-point win over bottom-placed Upper Ferntree Gully. The Waters have only won 3 games this season, but one of which was against the Blues in round 4. They were hardly troubled and went on to win by 64 points. The Waverley Blues are a well-drilled side under the guidance of coach Brett Davidson and have caused several upsets this season, including wins against North Ringwood and Croydon. Wayne McInerney is crucial to Bayswater's forward line structure and was exceptional with 4 goals in the Donvale win. Joel Galvin, Anthony Hogan and Samuel Nevins have also been lively contributors throughout the past few weeks. The Blues have another number of avenues to goal in the forward half, including Robert Hartfield, Glen Marnie and Nathan McCulloch. Hamish League is also enjoying a stellar season and having been named in the best 9 times from 11 matches. Both teams are hard to separate on paper, but I think that the Waverley Blues will win for Brett Davidson in his 500th game as coach.
Mulgrave and Donvale clash at Mulgrave Reserve tomorrow, Braden. I don't know what is going on down at Donvale at the moment, but it's certainly heading south, and they need to try and get a win on the board if they want to have any chance of playing finals this year. They'll come up against Mulgrave at their home ground.
It's going to be a difficult task for Donvale to make finals. I mean, they're now, 3 games out. It's more about developing players and just making sure you don't put yourself in a pressure situation going into the last 2-3 weeks of the season where you're going to be desperate to avoid relegation. They're only 2 games out of relegation and pretty close in percentage with Upper Ferntree Gully, so they need to be careful there, Donvale. Mulgrave, we saw them keep coming back to this game because they were outstanding in round 1 against Bayswater, and since then we haven't seen too much of them there. They're also in trouble with relegation. Only a game above Upper Ferntree Gully, and at the moment they're probably the side that look like they're in a whole lot of trouble. They're struggling to kick goals, and Donvale to some extent are on a similar page, but Nick Murphy's kicked 23 for them for the season, so at least they've been able to find at least one avenue to go. Both teams losing last week, and relegation, as I said, is a real prospect. I think Donvale, probably the last couple of weeks, hasn't summed up their potential. I think they're not a bad side, and Graham Cuff's been able to bring some new sort of initiatives this year. And look, it's going to be a close game, but I think Donvale are gonna probably get up by, say, 5 or 6 goals, because I just think Mulgrave don't have the cattle at the moment.
2 big games in Division 2 tomorrow afternoon, Sam, and the first one we're going to have a look at is Doncaster East taking on North Ringwood. A must-win game for Doncaster East, but it's not going to be easy going on North Ringwood's form last weekend.
No, it certainly won't, and it's set to be a really exciting game, this one, because both teams have got plenty of players that can really impress out there. Doncaster East have been fantastic in the last couple of weeks, and if they win this one here, it really does open up that Division 2 ladder, because they're currently 2 games out, but as I said, they're playing great footy, and they can really challenge the great teams, as we saw against Croydon last week. They did go down by 7 points, but that performance showed that they can mix it with the best and put in a really good performance there. I think the resurgence, it's been due to 2 new stars that have come down to the club, and we've heard plenty about him in the last couple of weeks. One of them, the ex-Hawk, Carl Peterson, 20 goals in 5 games and bags of 5 and 6 in the last 2 weeks is pretty handy for any side, and they're really enjoying his form down there. Joel Roos is another one. I understand he's the nephew of Paul Roos, and he's kicked 11 goals in 5 games and kicked a bag of 6 as well. So they're 2 strong goal kickers who are good players all across the field. So if they get another good contribution out of them, they're really going to challenge North Ringwood, who I thought were very impressive last week against Mooroolbark. They stood up after an early challenge and put their foot down to win that game. And one of the things I love about them is they do have these new players sort of coming through, and they step up as they come into the side. Kane Van Newen made his debut last week. Oren Aziz played his first game for the year, and Jordan Sultana has played a couple of games as well. And then you throw in a guy like Rory Hardbeck, who obviously has played plenty of good footy in the past, but missed quite a bit of it this year. I think they've got great depth, and I think they're very well coached by Brett Moyle as well. Because when these guys do come into the side, they know what's going on and they put in good performances. So they seem to all be on the same wavelength down there. As I said, this is going to be a really exciting game. I'm a bit jealous of Ray Baird going out to this one because I think it'll be a cracker. I think North Ringwood will win it.
And arguably, game of the round tomorrow afternoon, Mitch, is in your hands. It's Croydon taking on Montrose out there at Melbourne Oval. This will be the first time in 10 years that Montrose have ventured down to beautiful Croydon Oval. Will it be a successful one, or can Croydon cause an upset?
Yeah, well, many believe that this could well be a possible Division 2 grand final clash. Montrose, they've only lost the one game this season. They sit comfortably in top place, 2 points clear of the next best. They easily accounted for Mulgrave to the tune of 71 points in their last showing. Croydon have been consistent all this season, losing just 3 games, and they look set to feature in the finals. The Blues, they had to work hard in their last game against Doncaster East and came from behind to win by just 7 points. Montrose and Croydon also met in the radio game in round 5, and it was the Demons that got over the line there by 32 points. The Demons, they've got a pretty settled 22, led by inspirational skipper Brett Johnson, who regularly features in the best and has also been able to chip in with a goal or two in most games. For the Blues, several of its younger players have really stepped up this season, including Billy Dixon, Jamie Haig, Jamie Hoffman and Lee Kimpton. This will be a big test for the Blues against the premier team of Division 1. I wouldn't rule out a Croydon upset, but it's hard to go past Montrose, and they should do enough to win.
And this is a premier edition of the Friday preview, all thanks to Inside Football. Make sure you pick up that great read at your local newsagents or download on your smartphones or tablets. Time to have a look at the premier division of the Eastern Football League. It is Division 1, and as we have a look at the Division 1 ladder, we turn our attention towards the top, and Rowville taking on Noble Park. Rowville in 6th, Noble Park in 3rd. This one will be out at Scoresby Recreation Reserve tomorrow afternoon. But you would think Noble Park should be too strong, Braden Ingram, or do you smell a little bit of an upset here for Rowville?
Yeah, look, I don't think so. I've been pretty impressed, let's be honest, by Rowville this year. They've got a young list. Paul Minot's done well. I mean, at the start of the year, I think he really flagged this as a development year, get some games into his young boys and really focus on for next year, especially considering they don't have a home ground. They're playing out of Scoresby. And look, to be 6th after 11 games with 5 wins, 6 losses, I think he'll be pretty pleased with that. But at the same time, they're only a game out of the top 5 and within finals. So, look, they certainly can't rule out the hopes. They got pretty well turned up by Vermont last week. Went down by 53 points. They actually beat Vermont early in the year, Rahul. So they can match it with the top sides. But more often than not, their wins have come against the lower sides. I think Noble Park, especially at home, they've been really strong. So, look, venturing away from home could be difficult, but they're going along really well. Vergam Fake, loving his work in the ruck. Always give him a mention. That's been a key aspect for them. The clearances, they've been very good from there. They like running the ball and using the ball through the middle, I think, like Balwyn do. They are a bit of a speedy side, and they can use it well. And I think tomorrow they're going to be too strong. Rowville could test them, but Noble Park, they really want to keep in touch with Vermont. And I mean, if Balwyn can beat Vermont tomorrow, they can be even with Vermont and really push for that second place. So it'll be a really, really tight game, but Noble in the end, because Rowville, they can beat the bottom sides, but not against the top.
For the second time in this week's edition of the Friday preview, Sam Gastin, I smell a danger game. It's a danger game here for Knox because they come up against East Burwood, who are on a bit of a roll, well, a one-game roll after their first win of 2013 last weekend.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's much of a roll, but it's a massive relief. That's what it is for East Burwood. They would have been wrapped with their performance last week against East Ringwood. They got up by 19 points at home there, so they're off the board. They've got their first win for the year, and I think they'll be hoping to sort of continue it on from there and get a few more wins, one of which could come at the expense of Knox this week. Matt Mariani, I watched him earlier on in the year, and I thought he was pretty impressive. He was best on ground last week and has been in the best 5 times this year and kicked 11 goals. So they do get good contributions out of him, as they do with Jason Kennedy as well, who's been in the best 7 times. And when he is in the best, they put him at the top of the players there as well. So he sounds like a guy that can really turn a game. I don't want to jump to too many conclusions about East Burwood. I think it is great that they've got their first win, but there's still probably a few issues down at that club with their on-field performances. So hopefully they can gain a bit of respect for the rest of the year, maybe avoid relegation, but I don't think they'll be strong enough to beat Knox this week, who really had a heartbreaking loss last week against South Croydon. In a game that was at home, they were up at half-time and they ended up going down by 2 points. So very disappointing there. Paul Treadray and Marcus Jordan were the best last week, as was Sam Jeffrey, who I've mentioned a couple of times this year. He's having a great season and he's been in the best 8 times as well. So they're getting plenty out of him, as they are from a couple of the other players there. I think Knox will win. I think it'll be a close one, though.
The Woods clash tomorrow at Mullen Reserve, Mitch. It's Norwood against East Ringwood, and which Wood will reign supreme? Mitch Wood.
Well said, Ben.
Thank you.
Both Norwood and East Ringwood, they'll be eager to turn things around tomorrow afternoon after suffering upset losses last week. The Norsemen were expected to defeat Scoresby, but were outclassed by the young side and lost by 10 points. They do, however, still sit in 4th position and need to win this game to get their season back on track. Likewise, the Roos were favourites against the winless East Burwood. However, Fabian Corrali's men had other plans and went on to win by 19 points. The two teams last met in round 2, with Norwood winning by 23 points after trailing by 15 points at three-quarter time. Norwood's best footy is capable of beating any side in Division 1, but they have struggled for consistency in recent weeks. The likes of Matthew Declure, Jake Ford, Rhett Jordan and the ever-so-reliable Brett English have been performing well and must bring it into tomorrow's game. Having only won 3 games this season, East Ringwood are playing for pride, and they will need a big four-quarter effort from all 22 players. Young Jaden Battagleen was fantastic last week with 3 goals, and that will do his confidence the world of good. Despite the shock loss last week to Scoresby, I'm confident that the Norsemen will make amends and win by around 5 goals.
And it is the premier game across, well, maybe the whole of Victoria, maybe the whole of Australia tomorrow afternoon, Braden Ingram. It's 1v2 in Division 1, Balwyn taking on Vermont. And obviously it is the radio game on 98.1 Radio Eastern FM. Tune in from 1 till 6 p.m. They'll hear your special comments, but more importantly, they'll hear a great game between two powerhouses of the EFL.
Delicious is how I'm going to describe this one, Ben. I think most of the media team's been salivating over this game for many a week, and really it's going to be sensational. Out at Balwyn Park, we're all going to be out there, as you said, and both teams rocking along very nicely. Balwyn undefeated, Vermont haven't lost since round 2, and honestly, down back, I think this one's going to be won, and that's because the goal kickers for both sides, they've really been up and about. Justin Van Union's kicked 51 for the season, including a tally of 10 against East Ringwood, and he hasn't kicked less than 4 in the last 6 weeks. He's going along very nicely. Then you've got Balwyn's Lukey Barker. He's kicked 23 goals in 3 weeks, including 11 against Knox. He's not having a bad season either. So, look, and then you throw in Jeff Goebbels as well for Balwyn. So, look, the backs are going to have their work cut out, and it's simply as who's going to be able to stop those guys from kicking goals. I think it's going to be the team that win it. The players standing out for me, Rennie Gilchrist, we know he's a gun, so I like to focus on his brother Taylor. He's been a really nice addition for Balwyn this year, wins plenty of it, uses it well, and good hard runner, and that's been the key of the Balwyn game. You've seen a fair bit of them, Ben, and as you mentioned to me before, their run through the midfield, when they get that game going, they pretty much are unstoppable, and if they get that going, I think they will get up against Vermont. Tommy Schneider's another player from Vermont. He's come from the Box Hill Hawks, been a really nice addition. We saw him earlier in the year in a radio game against Knollpark, won plenty of it. I expect him to do the same. These two teams, of course, met in round 2. Balwyn got up by 17 points, but Vermont were a little wasteful. They actually had 3 more scoring shots in that game, so they're going to match it, and I think Chris Barlow has his side just where he wants them. They're probably a little bit lax, although they had tough games early in the year. They're really up and about now, but Balwyn in the end, they're a quality side, and they're tracking really well. Don't be surprised if they're undefeated by the end of the home and away season. They'll get up by 7 points on the weekend.
From the top of the ladder to the bottom of the ladder, well, almost the bottom of the ladder, Blackburn taking on Scoresby out at Moreton Park tomorrow afternoon. Sam Gastin, how do you see this one going? Scoresby will go in with plenty of confidence after a massive upset over Norwood last week.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think anyone would have expected the Scoresby side to beat Norwood last week. They won by 10 points. They led all day as well, so they'll get plenty of confidence out of that performance, as they will from Jared Hicks, who kicked 6 goals last week, adding to his tally of 21 for the year. So that's a very impressive statistic there. Adam Parker as well continues to impress. He's been in the best 7 times. Now, Blackburn, this turns into a really important game for Blackburn because with East Burwood winning last week, they're in a little bit of trouble. Sitting at 11th on the ladder in second last spot there, and not much is going right for them. They've lost 7 straight, so they'll be looking to get the win on the board here. I think they would have been after a much better performance last week than the 71-point loss to the Noble Park side. Tim Watkins as well, the name we all know from that big mark earlier in the year. He kicked 2 goals in the ones on the weekend, so was their leading goal kicker there, which, it's a good effort for him, but it probably says a little bit more about their key forwards, which have gone missing in the last couple of weeks. But having Anthony Fagan back last week was a massive boost for them. It's only his 3rd game of the year and came in and was best performer for Blackburn. So, look, there's a little bit of history between these sides. Scoresby won the last 6 against Blackburn and they defeated them by 65 points earlier in the year. So I think it'll be a close one, but I think Scoresby might take that confidence and win.
And the final game in Division 1 is Lilydale taking on South Croydon. The Dales and the Dogs go head-to-head up Maroondah Highway, Mitchellwood. How do you see this one playing out? It's a big game because South Croydon, I don't know if they've overachieved, but they certainly surprised a lot of people this year.
Yeah, they have. It's a huge game for both teams as both Lilydale and South Croydon are fighting for that 5th spot to play in the finals. The Falcons sit in 5th place, but just 1 game behind them is the Bulldogs in 7th position. Lilydale were no match for the undefeated Balwyn last week, losing by 98 points, so they'll be hoping to rectify things tomorrow afternoon. On the other hand, South Croydon pulled off a superb 2-point victory away from home over Knox. Both teams played out in a high-scoring shootout in round 1, and it was the Bulldogs holding on to win by just 2 goals. Lilydale's coach Simon Rock is showing tremendous faith in his youth, with Billy Gardner, Kyle Maher and Benjamin Stevens all receiving opportunities at senior level. The experience of Marcus Hoddies and Grant Hill will be invaluable come tomorrow afternoon in this must-win game for the Falcons. The Bulldogs are rapt to have Nicholas King back in the side, while Daniel Coughlin, Benjamin Osborne and Glenn Strawn have been nothing but class this season. South Croydon's coach Damien Franken would be pleased with James Crow's 4-goal effort in the close win over Knox. The Falcons would still be hurting from this massive loss to Balwyn, and I feel as though they'll bounce back at home in a close win.
Nice work, gents. That has been the Inside Football Friday preview done and dusted ahead of round 12, and it should be a fascinating round. If you're going out to a game, make sure you support your team loud and strong. They'll need it, and it should be a ripping day across all of Melbourne's eastern suburbs. Make sure you tune into the radio game tomorrow. It's Balwyn against Vermont, first versus second in Division 1. It does not get much better than that on 98.1 Radio Eastern FM and EFL.org.au. Sam Gastin, been a pleasure to have you on board for the Friday preview once again. Make sure you enjoy your game that you head out to tomorrow.
Certainly will. It's been a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
And Braden, I'm sure you're looking forward to heading out and see the Tigers and the Eagles. Looking forward to some of those very special comments.
Yeah, going to be a cracker. I think I'm going to tear it to shreds.
And Mitch, I'm sure you're going to tear Chirnside Park and Templestowe to shreds tomorrow, particularly in the 19s, but then in your look back in the after-game report as well. Good luck tomorrow.
Thanks heaps, Ben. I'm doing it alongside Paul Simonicides, so that should be really good fun.
That's almost as big as Balwyn and
sit between it.
Almost as big as Balwyn and Vermont. Tomorrow will be the 19s between Chirnside Park and Templestowe. Best of luck to the boys. That's been the Friday preview. I've been Ben Waterworth, and as a wise man once said, stick a fork in us. We're done.